Hello, thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'm Swostika Thapaliya, and along with our former president, Riju Dhakal, will be presenting on our YUWA's journey on the advocacy of sexual and reproductive health and rights in Nepal. Beginning the presentation, we're from Nepal. So Nepal is a landlocked country that is situated in South Asia. It's a small country between two giant countries, China and India, with population of around 3 million people. The recent census of 2021 showed us the data that the annual growth rate of annual population growth rate is 0.93%. The score of Human Development Index, Nepal's score in Human Development Index is 0.602. In Gender Equality Index, it scores 0.452. And the maternity mortality ratio is 239 per 100,000 live births. Talking about our organization, YUWA. YUWA is a youth-led, youth-run organization, which was established in 2009. It was established to create momentum of youth activities and to help young people raise their issues. So it was established in 2009. It is registered as not-for-profit organization. And the staff, executive board, interns, volunteers, everybody associated with YUWA are young people of age 16 to 29 years only. So we work to empower young people's voices and their stances through participation and advocacy. And we envision young people at all decision-making levels, and we envision them to become change makers in their communities and societies. Talking about the reach, YUWA's reach, YUWA directly and indirectly has reached to more than 475,000 people. It has reached, its reach is there in more than 50 districts in the country. Let's move towards the status of sexual and reproductive health and rights in our country, in Nepal. So the Constitution of Nepal, 2015, it guarantees the right to safe motherhood and reproductive health to every woman. Along with this, other rights that are relevant to reproductive health are rights, right to dignity, right to equality, right to health, that are ensured by the Constitution of Nepal. And this has been possible because Nepal has ratified international human rights treaties, including CEDAW, ICCPR, ICSCR, and CRC. Nepal has also pledged to effective implementation of important global and regional commitments on sexual and reproductive health and rights, notably the Program of Action of ICPD and that of Beijing Declaration. So while we talk about the status of sexual and reproductive health and rights of our country, there are few components that are important. So talking about the safe abortion, Nepal has legalized abortion in 2002 and the Constitution of Nepal, as well as Safe Motherhood and Reproductive Health and Rights Act of 2018, guarantees right to abortion as fundamental right for every woman. So the gestation limit for abortion in the cases of rape, fetal impairment, mental health issues, physical health issues, and other incurable diseases and HIV is 28 weeks. And in other conditions, other on request, safe abortion is legalized. The gestational limit is 12 weeks. While there is the policy, free abortion services policy in place, but there are many challenges in the implementation side of it, because there's lack of knowledge, there's lack of service providers that give these safe abortion health services. There's stigma among young people to utilize the safe abortion services. And the other challenge is also that of sex-selective abortion. Another priority area of Nepal government is that of adolescent sexual and reproductive health services, which is also relevant to what YUWA does. There are provisions of adolescent-friendly health facilities and adolescent-friendly information corners in the reproductive health strategy, adolescent health strategy of Nepal, which targets these adolescent-friendly health service facilities in the health sector, health facilities in all the 77 districts. But there are lacking in this, there are challenges in this component of sexual and reproductive health rights in Nepal, because there is a lack of uniformity in the action of different actors. There is lacking of proper reporting and data that is generated from these health services. There is lack of intra-sectoral coordination, because this aspect of sexual and reproductive health and rights requires collaboration from different stakeholders, and there's lack of evidence of the practicality of the general counseling that is provided in these health facilities. Comprehensive sexuality education is another area that is essential to the fulfillment of sexual and reproductive health and rights of young people in Nepal. So in context of Nepal, while the school curriculum does cover some topics of comprehensive sexuality education as per the International Technical Guidelines on Sexuality Education, the content is rather vague and inconsistent. There has been a recent revision in curriculum and our school curriculum, and topics like gender identity and sexual orientation has been included in the curriculum, but it still lacks an intersectional approach in addressing those issues in full-fledged form. And the curriculum is mostly knowledge-based, and it lacks attitude and skill-oriented learning. Along with this, the topic of sexuality is still taboo in Nepal, and that leads to the reluctance in discussing and addressing the sexual health issues in the country. Nepal is a patriarchal nation, and there is a sort of power imbalance between the male members of the society and the female members of the society, and that affects how women claim their sexual and reproductive health and rights. And young people are stigmatized if they do not conform to the socially accepted norms and behaviors. For example, if adolescents have sex before marriage, or if young people articulate their sexuality differently, then they are stigmatized and not readily accepted in the society. Along with this, let us also dive into the climate change scenario of the country and its interlinkages with sexual and reproductive health and rights. Nepal is situated in the lap of Himalayas, and it is highly vulnerable to climate change. And it has already experienced changes in temperature at faster level than that of global averages. And Nepal is such a country where adaptation strategies are more important than that of mitigation strategies. So when we look at the interlinkages between climate change and SRHR, we all know that climate change is not a gender neutral phenomenon. So women and girls in all diversities are disproportionately impacted by the existing gender inequalities and the unfulfilled SRHR needs in the context of our country. There are various examples to how the unfulfilled sexual and reproductive health and rights of young people, especially women and girls, is exacerbated by these climate change issues. In countries like Nepal, where girls and women are allowed to eat only after men and boys have eaten, this leads to the undernutrition of girls, and that because they are only expected to eat from leftovers. So that pushes these girls into the vicious cycle of intergenerational undernutrition. And since families are affected by poverty, they would want to marry their young daughters off at early age because they are considered as financial burden. So that also increases the chances of unintended pregnancies and unsafe abortion, and the limited use of the sexual and reproductive health services that is being provided to them. And especially after the disasters and natural calamities that are exacerbated by these climate change issues, women do not have enough time for sanitation, personal hygiene, especially in the times of pregnancy and menstruation. So that is also an issue. And traveling long distances to fetch water and firewood has also resulted in prolapsed uterus among women. So these are the interlinkages that a few examples of interlinkages that we see in climate change and SRHR. So what we as young people want to see is a climate resilient environment. And it is only possible when sexual and reproductive health and rights is fulfilled. So because when there's gender equality and when young people and people in general are allowed to make choices to decide whether to reproduce or not, that will ultimately make the environment more climate resilient and more and improves the adaptation strategies to tackle the climate change issues. So in this context, where Nepal is situated, YUWA works to tackle the issues of sexual and reproductive health and rights. It has 3 thematic areas, to be precise, one of which is active citizenship. Under active citizenship, YUWA works to empower the young people, about the issues of the country, what's going around the country, and they make young people as active citizens, as it is mentioned in the name itself. It focuses especially on youth leadership and participation. There's another thematic area, which is sexual and reproductive health and rights, which we will be talking in the further slides as well. And in research unit, it is a cross-cutting unit which works in generating evidence under active citizenship as well as sexual and reproductive health and rights. So under active citizenship, we have various in-house programs, one of which is Prarambha. Prarambha literally translates to initiation. So it's a common platform where young people come, innovate, and participate in order to bring new ideas, organize them, and implement them in order to empower themselves to raise their voices and their concerns about the situation that is going around in their community. The other in-house program under active citizenship is Pahichan, and Pahichan means identification, literally. And this is a workshop that is focused to capacitate young people in their leadership skills. And as Pahichan means identification, it helps to identify the resources, the locally available resources, and which are not productively used in the communities. So participants in this program, they will go through various interactive sessions and team building activities to come up with plan of action to conduct activities in their community. So each group, so this is a group activity that ensures team spirit also, and YUWA also provides small seed grants so that they can implement their plan of action in their communities. The other program that YUWA has recently done is on upcycling and gardening workshop, after along with the collaboration with other NGO that is present in Kathmandu. And in this workshop, young people learn how to recycle plastic bottles and they learn the important techniques of gardening to promote sustainability and climate resilience. Under sexual and reproductive health and rights thematic area, we work there are various in-house programs that work in ensuring young people's SRHR. So one of such program is Khula Akas, and it literally translates into open sky. Now, the picture on the left side is inside a room, while in the right side is in a Zoom platform like this. And this was conducted in the times of COVID. So in this program, what is done is that it's a discussion-based program with an objective to destigmatize and normalize the conversation around sexual and reproductive health and rights that is otherwise considered taboo in the society. So it does not focus on generating solution to the problems, but it works. It is meant to initiate conversations that are otherwise not done in the communities, like including the topics like contraception or abortion or other issues, issues. So it is also, the objective of this program is internalization and feeling free to talk about issues that are otherwise not talked about. The other program is of reaching out young minds, where these programs are conducted in communities, and sessions like adolescent changes, menstrual hygiene management, family planning, gender and sexuality, safe abortion, relationship, consent is provided to young people across different districts of the country. The other flagship program of YUWA under Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Unit is Youth Activist Leadership Council. Youth Activist Leadership Council is a group of 10 youth activists, and work in the community level to disseminate information about sexual and reproductive health and rights. It can be through peer education, peer-based education in school and out of school. And they also advocate at national and international level for improved sexual and reproductive health policies that support reproductive health, family planning services, comprehensive sexuality education, and many more. Under this, under YALC, Youth Activist Leadership Council, the various sessions, CAC sessions that Youth Activist Leadership Council conducts. So the picture shows one of such sessions on good touch and bad touch in the local schools. Youth Activist Leadership Council also produces podcasts, one of which is a discussion on women and climate change. The other one was on queering the queries. YUWA in the Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Unit also produces various teaching, learning materials, and one can, because young people, due to increased access of internet, one of the major areas or sources of information young people have for sexuality education is through internet. So YUWA produces these kinds of videos. So pregnancy videos, these videos are developed by Amaze, but YUWA has adapted them in the local vernacular language so that young people can access it properly in their language and get information, correct information about their bodies and their sexuality. So YUWA also has an e-learning course on comprehensive sexuality education in its website. So it has all the digital accessibility tools incorporated in it. And this course has been designed in a youth-friendly manner, has been adapted from the ITGSC guideline. So young people can, aged 15 to 18 above, can access these resources, learn about the comprehensive sexuality education, and at the end of the course can also receive certificates. Along with that, YUWA also conducts various digital campaigns, one of which is YUWA Avasar. It's a digital community in Facebook where young people are provided with opportunities to enhance their leadership capacities. There are other digital campaigns like CSC Can and CSC Can't Wait that's active in Instagram, where information about comprehensive sexuality education is posted in bite-sized form so that young people can consume it on a regular basis. Along with it, YUWA also works in various national advocacy and international advocacy spaces to ensure young people's SRHR. So here, YUWA conducts meeting with various government agencies, including National Women's Commission, in order to localize the Generation Equality Forum in Nepal. And it also regularly meets with the steering committee of the Center of Education, Human Resource Development and Curriculum Development Center, which to map out the area of support and collaboration with government, and to advocate about the inclusion of CSE in its full-fledged form in the curriculum of our country. Along with this, YUWA also gives statements at the international advocacy spaces pertaining to youth SRHR. Here, our former president, Riju Dhakal, has delivered session statement at the interactive dialogue with independent expert of Sochi at 50th session of Human Rights Council, as well as Nepal Universal Periodic Review, UPR, at Human Rights Council in 2021. The other, YUWA is also a place where young people come and participate in various youth innovations. There are various projects that facilitate these innovations. These are youth innovators that have come up with various solutions to the problems that is there in their communities, be it of climate change or SRHR. So under climate change, there had been young people, these youth innovators, they conducted a community-based campaign where they discouraged the use of plastic, single-use plastic bag, and encouraged the use of recycled cloth bags. And at the end of these digital campaigns, the community people pledged to use the cloth bag that they provided and promised in a way to not use the plastic bags, which was impactful. The other innovative idea that young people, these youth innovators implemented, was that of gender responsive classrooms, where they had conducted workshops with school teachers, secondary level school teachers, where they discussed about various topics like gender, power, patriarchy, discriminations, and later on, they also about how to have a gender responsive classroom, the skills required for it, the use of gender responsive lesson plan, use of gender sensitive language, and adapting the existing teaching learning materials in order to make the class sessions more gender responsive. So the workshop was provided to teachers, and the impact was assessed in the students. Another session that these youth innovators conducted was of adolescent-friendly health services site visit in order to help students observe what facilities their nearest primary health centers provided. And these site visit enabled them to go to the health services frequently. Otherwise, the young people going to adolescent-friendly health services is stigmatized in our country. So this facilitated young people to go for the adolescent counseling, uterine checkup, and to access the contraceptives. So along with the counseling that is provided in the health services side. So these are the few things that YUWA does. In the way forward, we have been working in sexual and reproductive health and rights arena for last 11 years, and we are working to ensure young people's access to sexual and reproductive health and rights and services. Along with this, we are also working to ensure young people's participation at decision-making at all levels, be it government or national and international spaces. So from last 2 years, we've also been exploring the areas of environmental sustainability and climate change. And we are also looking at the interlinkages between climate change and SRHR. So in future, we will be working collaboratively on these aspects, ensuring young people's decision-making capacities and the attainment of full-fledged SRHR issues. Thank you. That's all from my side.
All right, thank you so much. That was a really interesting presentation, and it's always great to get to learn about the work that YUWA is doing. We've been partnering now for a few years, and you guys have really expanded a lot of your programs, and you know, even gone into different sectors of development, which is really amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time today to talk about your work and to elucidate some of the connections between reproductive health, climate change, development, and gender equality throughout Nepal. So there are a few questions here that I'm going to get into, and I wanted to just say also that for the audience, if any of you have questions that you would like answered, please feel free to voice them in the chat, and we will get to as many as possible. Just quickly, I wanted to touch on something that you just said at the very end, Swostika, about kind of developing more of the linkages between SRHR and climate change and climate adaptation. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to sort of how that came about and what connections you saw between the two focus areas that made you want to integrate them into a program or into the broader organization and its mission.
So while we work on various issues of young people at YUWA, most of what we've been pioneering is sexual and reproductive health and rights, and around feminism and aspects of gender equality and such. But what we've realized over the past few years of our involvement in the field is that there are many other pockets that need to be explored that equally affect the participation of young people in the development programs and in their leadership as well. And though Nepal is a very small country, and there are lots of commitments made from the governments on various development sectors, gender equality, climate change, and stuff like that. And there's always that huge promise that we make that we contribute very less to environmental crisis and climate change and stuff like that. However, the impact that we're facing is really large when it comes down to looking back at our economic sector through tourism as well, or through the different natural disasters that are very frequent in country right now, or the weather change that we are seeing right now. And this has been affecting the public health domain in many various reasons, and sexual and reproductive health and rights is one such, as we've identified in our conversations around how social structures have been shaping the position of individuals, young people, and women, or individuals from diverse communities into the development sector, have also found out that these have disproportionate effects on individuals and the more vulnerable and marginalized communities. And our realization came through our years of working with young people, our practice of collecting more discussions and doing more consultations with young people and talking about it with our stakeholders, with decision makers. And I think we're still on the run to establish that interlinkage between the two. However, we potentially realize that we can do a great deal of work around the area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, of course, the focus on youth empowerment and advocacy is spot on in this space and in others as well. And I think you guys really touch on the the importance and the effectiveness of these sort of holistic approaches to development, recognizing that the environment and climate change is not separate from gender inequality, it's not separate from sexual and reproductive health, and the sort of best way forward to adapt, respond to climate change, and to develop as a society is to integrate all aspects of society into these platforms and to sort of empower youth from a more comprehensive and holistic perspective. So that's amazing. You mentioned in your presentation about how women are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And of course, Nepal is a very climate vulnerable country. And I was just wondering if you could touch a little bit on, how these gender disparities play out. You were talking about undernutrition, for example, and how it's common for women to eat after men and often, eat the leftovers, and how that sort of plays into greater vulnerability with regards to climate impacts. But I'm wondering if I have two kind of questions that are related. One, how do these gender disparities vary by location? Are you seeing this improve in more urbanized situations versus rural, or how is this playing out? And then also, is climate change impacting child marriage throughout the country as well? I think that's something that you touched on briefly in your presentation, but if so, does that vary as well according to urban versus rural spaces?
In urban areas, these effects are a little lesser than that of rural areas. In rural areas, the information about these issues are also less, and the more chances that these people in rural areas, they marry off their daughters earlier, as I have mentioned in the presentation also, because they are seen as a financial burden in their communities. In urban areas, also these phenomenon is seen, but it is not as prevalent as that in rural areas. So also what happens is that in rural areas, the calamities and disasters that are exacerbated by these climate change factors affect more often. So in city areas, there are proper infrastructures that somehow save a lot of displacement and disasters, epidemics in cases. But in rural areas, that flood and landslides that is exacerbated by climate change issues, that affects rural areas quite often. And the problem is more in rural areas.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And I want to kind of just continue on our discussion on the sort of cultural implications of your work. You mentioned in the presentation that Nepal has legalized abortion and that the 2015 constitution included grants to rights, like human rights to safe motherhood, for example, to reproductive health, the right also to dignity and to health overall, which is, I think, a really noble sort of pursuit. But you were also talking about how, despite this constitution and these sort of like legal platforms, there's been a lot of challenges with implementation. And you mentioned with regards to abortion, what I think was called sex selective abortion. And I was wondering if you could I touch on that a little bit, what that means.
So abortion, though it's legalized by the country, there's cultural taboo surrounding it, because Nepal is a deeply religious country, and the children are considered to be as God's gift. So killing fetuses, it's some form of sin. Touching upon the sex selective abortion, it is aborting its female fetus. So that is abortion of female. After you determine the sex of the fetus, you abort that. So in Nepal, so male child are considered to be the rearer of the family, that continue the generation and all of those sorts of things. So female female are not, after they give, parents or couples give birth to a lot of children, female children, so they are stigmatized by the community around them, surrounding around them, to have a male son. So since they cannot afford a lot of children, so they abort the female child in the expectation of a male child. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and you were talking about the sort of patriarchal structure of Nepal and how that's very heavily institutionalized. Again, from a cultural standpoint, but I was just looking up the demographics and saw that Nepal has over 120 languages that are spoken in 10 major religions, right? So there's a lot of, seems like, variation as well in terms of cultural identity and personhood. And so that might complicate things, it might make things easier, but I was just wondering what you think, one of the biggest barriers is to broader uptake and access of sexual and reproductive health. Do you view it as a generational thing? Is this something that's going to be changed over time with new generations coming into power, or how do you view that landscape? What are the major barriers, and then what would help the most in the shortest amount of time?
So you just talked about how new generation, after coming of new generation, the problems would reside. That would only be possible if the young people are capacitated with the adequate amount of knowledge on these issues. One of the barriers that I see is the cultural barriers that's there, and also about the access and knowledge of the adequate and accurate knowledge of sexual and reproductive health and rights. So if we work on that, capacitating people with knowledge and attitudes and skills that's required, that would definitely better the situation in coming days.
Absolutely. And there's a question from someone in the chat who's actually tuning in from Sierra Leone, asking about whether or not your materials and the recordings and the videos that you use in your programs would be available for other organizations in different places who are trying to engage in the same work. So looking at the capacity for capacity building across different geographies. And similarly, just quickly, similarly, do you have there's a question here asking about other sort of partnerships within Nepal. Do you work with other organizations within Nepal? Are you open to working with other organizations outside of Nepal, or how do you view your trajectory there?
So to answer your first question, the videos and the recordings, all of the online resources are available in our platforms, in our social media platforms, our YouTube channels, and all of these. So if young people are free to use these resources to increase their capacity and knowledge on sexual and reproductive health and rights. To answer your second question, YUWA has always is open to and is working with the NGOs, local NGOs, civil societies that is there in our local context. There are various coalitions. Right Here, Right Now project is one of the core projects under YUWA, where we work with 5 organizations now recently collaboratively. We are youth-led organization. The other organization is women-led, and disability. And another organization works for LGBTIQ community. the next one works for disability issues and disabled people. So we work in coalition, and so that our voices are streamlined and it comes out in a very strong way to advocate for our issues of sexual and reproductive health and rights, and to ensure young people's participation and decision making in these areas.
Wonderful. And I'm wondering too, just in your work with youth, like how that's going, and that probably depends on where and in what capacity you're working. But is it generally a situation where the youth are really excited to engage with you? Are there any resistance efforts, perhaps from parents or male figures, or you know, what is your outreach been like in terms of people being interested and engaged?
YUWA is a organization that is quite popular among young people in Kathmandu, especially among the students of public health and other similar backgrounds, engaging. And also I feel the programs that YUWA has are quite engaging in bringing young people into forefront, where they are able to discuss about their issues, and which otherwise they do not get chance of speaking and talking to. Young people are, it turns out that young people are quite interested about their bodies and their sexuality, and they do not have the adequate information elsewhere. So the engagement with the organization is quite good. Yeah.
Amazing. That's so great to hear. And there's a comment here in the chat just of someone who's really admiring the work that you're doing and the engagement of young people. She says, such insight, courage, outreach, and interaction with their government is amazing. And also that including boys in their educational sessions is so important. So I just wanted to make sure that you got to hear that amazing feedback, and thank you, Jeannie, for the comment. We'll just get into two kind of wrap up questions here at the end. There's one asking just more broadly about how YUWA measures the impact of their work. So I think that you mentioned you've reached so many thousands of people and empowered, certain populations. So how do you measure the impact of empowerment or bodily autonomy or any of the other indicators you use?
So YUWA has about the digital reach. We measure it through our digital platforms that's there, but about how YUWA measures the impacts that of its work, we have a monitoring and evaluation section in our organization that looks about the changes that our works have done to increase sexual and reproductive rights and health situation in the country. So we try to understand the impacts of these impacts of our work through these areas. Riju, if you could add up to the impact measurement section of the
Yeah, I think I would like to jump in. So first thing, I think I'll answer a few of your questions that were previously called out as well, Hannah, because we are a youth organization and we're looking for partnerships. So we are very open to partnering with all organizations, whether that's within Nepal or outside. And our preference is, if you would like to work with young people, that's our preference, and that's the area where we'd like to partner more. While we are talking about partnership, it could be just simply a sharing of capacity among each other, or promotion of meaningful and inclusive youth participation at your organizations, and at different levels, or maybe having some expert discussions around topics for young people involved at YUWA, and it could be at different scales. I think Swostika and Stephanie and Hannah will surely drop out the contact details for that. So we're very open to partnership on that. Talking about our measuring impacts, it always has been a very difficult task for YUWA, because we're a youth organization that transforms leadership in every 2 years, and there's a whole change of the organizational structure in terms of people involved in every 2 years, because our age limit of young people is until 29. And that makes the organization very dynamic in terms of the programs, ideas, or people involved, and the systems as well. And while the systems start become dynamic, and then measuring impacts become different, different, they give different values and definitions to different systems that are in place at YUWA. So most of what measuring impact has been is around our reach with young people, in terms of numbers, in terms of the stories, in terms of the impacts that we've made in bringing changes. And while we're talking about making reach to young people, we've also helped establish another youth organization that that came out of a program from YUWA itself, which is called Get Empowered by Travel. And there are qualitative methods where we collect stories, we track, life stories of people who are involved with us. And then there's a big chunk of advocacy we do, where measuring impact becomes really difficult. And the smallest of commitments, the biggest of political movements along certain lines, or stances from leaders, influencers, also becomes the kind of impact that we are looking. Moving on to the digital platform, it's quite quantitative. It comes out into numbers, and then there's the use of different platforms, the different teaching learning materials that we've published until now, the different sessions of capacity strengthening, their outcomes in terms of personal growth, professional growth, and stories that come out of it. And it has been a learning experience for us. And as a dynamic organization, our methods of or approaches of measuring impact have not always been very stagnant and similar to most other organizations that have traditionally worked in Nepal. So yeah, we're still in the phase of learning and unlearning a lot.
Absolutely. And I think that you've got it pretty well established there, but I think it is difficult sometimes to measure the qualitative impact, because it's not quantitative, right? It's not based on numbers, it's based off of feelings, perceptions, and attitudes changing over time. But no doubt you both are doing amazing work. And we're right at 8 o'clock here, my time. So we'll wrap it up. But thank you so much again for joining us. It's always so great to hear from you and to uh, learn about the work that you're doing throughout Nepal. It's truly inspiring, and I'm really impressed by all of the progress that's constantly being made. So thanks again for talking to us today, and yeah, keep going. Amazing job.